Welcome to the Film Threat podcast. This is our wrap-up episode of the 2018 South by Southwest Film Festival. I'm Chris Gore, and I'm here with
Natalia Winkelman. Thanks for having me, Chris. This is my second Film Threat podcast.
Only your second, and your second big film festival.
It's true. Yeah, I was at Sundance in January, and this is my second one, other than ones that I've just gone to kind of casually in New York.
Now, I've been to South by Southwest several times. Oh, I should mention that we're actually in the Hilton, right outside the convention center, and so it's a little chaotic. We were just trying to find a quiet place to record a podcast. This is the best we could do. So if you hear some odd noises in the background, now you know where we are. So, and they're just about to set up the bar over here in the corner. We're hoping to crash the interactive folks and grab a drink. But so I've been here several times. I've actually had two films in South by Southwest, a short and a feature. But being here as journalists is a different experience. How was your first experience in terms of panels, parties, the scene, and the people? There definitely is a different vibe to this than Sundance.
Yeah, I mean, just because of the weather alone, I think that it's a little bit more chilled out than I felt at Sundance. I guess at Sundance you kind of have to just plan ahead so much because there's snow and transportation to think about, and here it's beautiful outside. It's been 65 or 70 every single day, and a lot more day drinking, I would say, than at Sundance. And the films don't start until 10 or 11 a.m., whereas at Sundance you could see an 8:30 screening if you wanted to. So they're sort of already building into their schedule the fact that people are going to be going out or chilling out or sleeping in.
I do really thank the organizers of South by Southwest for really taking that day drinking into account. It really does. Well, there's a lot of cocktail parties and meetups and networking, but here's where I've met people that I've known for years, whether it's filmmakers, other journalists who cover, the indie film scene, and also people that work in the tech space. I mean, the biggest complaint, I guess, about South by Southwest is that it's gotten too big. I happened to go to the Tech Expo, where they've got the expo in there, all the different, it's everything from software to tech stuff. And I actually talked to the company that developed the app, the South by Southwest Go app, and they told me that there are 8,000 different events in the app. It was one of the most difficult apps to program. This is what they do. They do apps for conventions and festivals. But so in terms of like the panels and parties that you've seen, what would, tell me about that experience? Yeah,
I mean, a huge theme, just kind of uniting everything that I've interacted with here, is that there's just been a lot of female content, and that might be because of the climate right now, and South by programs that because it's popular and interesting for a lot of people right now. But I think also just because this is such a kind of a grittier film festival, they really do want to champion these up-and-comers who haven't had access to the larger festivals. So almost every movie I've seen has been directed by a woman, and I've gone to panels with women writers and women filmmakers. So that's been really interesting for me, navigating that.
Yeah, I would say that, I don't think it was on purpose, actually. I don't think there was sort of any agenda on their part to just program women filmmakers. I just think that there were a lot of really great movies made by women that they just put in the festival. And also, having been here in the past, I will say that, I've met a lot of women filmmakers that just sort of, let's put in some movies. I don't know if there's ever been in the past, a women's filmmakers program, but I really think it's more coincidence than anything else. Yeah. That's my optimistic view.
You could say that, but because the other festivals haven't really followed suit with the high percentage of female directors, I think that's saying something about South by, that they might be going out of their way to try and make sure that there's gender parity.
I don't know. Maybe. Joan Pearson, she runs the, South by Southwest. I don't know if that has anything to do with it. She has for the last 10 years now, I want to say. I think she's done a phenomenal job. Yeah. I cannot believe the way they've expanded the number of venues, the number of films showing, the programs. It really is impressive this year. I mean, I think there was only one film I was disappointed in. Oh my God, wait, we should talk about the films. Isn't that why people listen to this podcast? To talk about the movies? I know that we'll talk, we'll talk about events, parties, panels, whatever that we went to, and there were a lot, but let's start with, we'll just ping pong. Tell me about, we'll lead up to your favorite film of the festival.
Okay.
But for right now, what are some of the films that you've seen? But save your favorite film for South by Southwest 2018 will be talked about at the end.
Okay.
Save that choice for the very end.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, some ones that I've enjoyed, not my favorite, but I liked Galveston, which was directed by Melanie Laurent. She's just the director that I've been following, and I think this is really talented. It's kind of this Americana story starring Elle Fanning and Ben Foster. Elle Fanning plays this kind of prostitute down on her luck, and Ben Foster is kind of like a macho man who takes her under his wing. And so I think it is just really interesting seeing that story, which is so masculine, directed by a woman. And it's really beautiful to look at. She does a really good job.
Wait, when you say masculine,
yeah.
This is so weird. Like, I would say that I've been in relationships with women in the past that some just were more masculine in certain ways. And I don't mean that, like, I'm not saying that they were, what's that stupid term, tomboy? That doesn't make any sense. Right. I think it's an outdated term, but these are, attributes, I guess you would say, but like when you look at certain female directors, why is there? I don't know.
Has that not been interesting for women? Is that I guess I would say it's a masculine story or this type of story about this kind of lone wolf type man character out in the Midwest. Because it's just a male dominated story. There's not that many women that are kind of running communities out there. They have other types of roles that are more submissive. Mm-hmm. And in this one, the woman does have a more traditionally submissive role in that she's this prostitute who's really taken advantage of. But Elle Fanning plays it beautifully, and there's so much emotion that goes into that part. So I think that was what made it different with Melanie Laurent in the director's chair for that one, is that character is more fleshed out and three-dimensional and just more magnetic to watch on screen than maybe some of the men.
Well, I think when it comes to stories, right, I think a woman is perfectly capable of telling a story with a male lead, as I think a male director is perfectly capable of making a film with a female lead. I think Sigourney Weaver, her character in the Alien series, is like a perfect example of like a strong female action hero, smarter than everyone she's surrounded by. Like, that's an example in history. I think the one thing that doesn't really work is you have the ethnicity of a certain actor trying to play a different ethnicity does not work. As much as I love Breakfast at Tiffany's with Audrey Hepburn, the stuff with there's just the horribly racist character that like is just like embarrassing. Actually, it's embarrassing that's like the most glaring example, but there are a lot of other examples. But I think that empathy knows no gender. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense? I'm trying to be profound. It's not working.
Well, what you were talking about is actors playing characters right. Whereas with directing, it's different because you're working with an actor who brings all of their experiences to that role as well, and so that it should be kind of more of a collaborative project with the actor and the director, fleshing out the character together. Mm-hmm. But that is interesting because while when Breakfast at Tiffany's came out, that might not have been sort of something that critics were looking at or noticed as a problem. Now it's like jarring to watch because it's so ridiculous. And on some of the panels that I've seen that I've watched, a lot of the women have been talking about the fact that just the paradigms are shifting so quickly right now that movies that would have been popular and mainstream in 2005 would not be greenlit now because it's not an interesting story for women or minority, like people of color, and so executives and production companies are just realizing that there's lots of audiences out there that are actually going to be interested in these other stories. So it's not only just kind of for some social good; it's actually kind of lucrative and a smart move to be making stories that cater to those audiences.
Yeah. Wow. This is, okay, obviously our conversations of the podcast are always going to go into little diverts and tangents. I'll quickly talk about no, that was a great one. That was a great one. This is
back to the movies.
but it will all, it will divert into that. I mean, look, look, it should have always been 50-50 on when it comes to directors in terms of, your basic composition. I mean, I think what might even have more of an impact is, politically speaking, the way that our Congress is built is about representation, right? That's all that, the whole thing is about representation, right? So, we have 2 senators per state, and then we've got like the Congress, which is based on population, right? So I think things would change a lot more if that were more 50-50 in Congress, and would impact decision making, maybe? I don't know. So movies, that's a step forward, but yeah. Okay. And now that you've unsubscribed to the podcast because I got on a soapbox for a second, what? I mean, to me it's just really logical. I don't know. Like,
I agree.
Yeah.
Totally fair. Yeah.
Well, it's like, I think about also like in the beginnings of Star Trek, there's a friend of mine who's working on a Star Trek related project that I can't really talk about right now, but one of the big things was that so there was the Captain Pike in the first pilot of Star Trek. The number one, the second in command, was a woman. And the TV executives at NBC at the time were like, no one's going to believe that a woman is the second in command. And Gene Roddenberry fought for that. Mm-hmm. And then there was a quote half-breed, a Vulcan and human, in the character of Spock, and it was one of those choose your battles. He said, all right, I want to preserve this Spock character, and a time for strong female characters in Star Trek will be another day, which of course came, but
well, why don't you talk a little bit about Ready Player One? Because I know that you had some issues there. You felt like it was a little bit dated in the way that it was.
Yeah, let's talk about my least favorite film that I saw it. No, I'm sorry. Look,
it'll be interesting.
I haven't seen as many movies as I would have liked, but Ready Player One I was excited about because I'm a fan of the book, and I did a whole podcast about this, but oh my God, I was so tired when I recorded it. I could it was bad. My apologies to anyone who listened to my Ready Player One podcast. But the bottom line is, I think that the movie did not do a good job of world building. I think world building is a big part of anything genre, fantasy, science fiction. And one of the great parts about that book is the world building, how the world is different. There's a huge economic disparity between people who live in the stacks, which are these mobile homes stacked on top of each other. And people, the way children are educated by going into this thing called the Oasis. They actually go to schools, but they go to school virtually. There are no physical schools anymore. This was the least expensive way now to educate people. So, and also the character in it, as played by the lead actor in Ready Player One, is a good-looking white dude. Well, in the book, he's sort of a schlumpy, heavier dude. The version of himself in the Oasis is a much more idealized version of himself, which is something that a lot of people do in the virtual world. So I felt like it lost a lot of the essence of the book. And in addition, I felt like this book could have been better translated by an indie director who paid attention to those human and emotional details. I think that was a critical part. So, it's a critical part that was missing, and the fact that it really didn't, as a gamer, I am a gamer, it didn't, I think, understand. It just sort of did a digital version, and shot it like a movie. Well, that's not how video games work. You're seeing things either first person or third person. First person is the way you're seeing things, like a game like Doom or whatever, or third person is you kind of see the back of your head, or you kind of see the whole body of the character kind of moving around, and it didn't build that up. And also I felt it was lazy in this sense. It felt like characters from the 80s. There's this wisecracking black friend that was like a black friend character from an older film, which just kind of felt it's these are sort of Spielberg versions of these ethnic stereotypes. And I'm not saying it's racist or whatnot. I'm just saying that it just was lazy in that, and it could have taken some bigger risks. And so I love the book, and the book will I'll always have a fondness for the book, but I think that this is the height of nostalgia, and I hope that we can, as a movie-going culture, sort of close the book on nostalgia as a thing.
Yeah.
Interesting. And there you go. We're good with nostalgia. I like it. So, but we don't need a whole movie about it. And that's kind of what it is. So what's another film that you saw?
Let's see. So another one I saw, very different, was called Weed the People, and it's a documentary about, yeah.
What is that? There's like a horn. Sorry about that. Weed the People, which
Weed the People, yeah.
I guess Ricky Lake worked on that.
It's a documentary. It was filmed over many years, but it's...
What is this?
It's...
hard to find a quiet place in Austin to record a podcast.
Yeah, there's a lot of excitement going on. Yeah. It's about legalization of marijuana, but specifically for the purposes of cancer, children oncology. So it kind of follows these sick kids and their parents' projects or their efforts to cure the kids or help make their tumors smaller by using cannabis, which is so interesting. I had never heard of this before, but I guess it's something that has been kind of experimented or tampered with a little bit. And so they basically the documentary was kind of advocating for this, for government and hospitals to be paying attention to this a little bit more and actually kind of recognize this as something that can help kids and not be so stigmatized.
Wow, I heard that there was a press junket, and a friend of mine told me that you could smoke out at the press junket. Did you know that?
No.
I'm not, I support that people should be able to have access to marijuana, especially for medical reasons.
Yeah.
I had an uncle I was very close to that really inspired me to move out to California, who had got AIDS and used to get marijuana illegally so that he could smoke it and help him get through the drugs that they made you take at the time. This is more than 10 years ago, but so I support it, but I'm not a pot person per se.
Yeah.
So
no, me neither, and I'm definitely not. But I thought the movie took this really interesting stance where they kind of catered to both people that are pot people and people that might be a little bit more skeptical.
I don't understand the problem with it. Drugs that we take, normal drugs, are derived from plants and other things that alter the human, effects that we feel in our body to aid in pain and whatnot. Marijuana is just another one. It's just another tool in the basket of things that can help, heal people.
Right.
So I do not understand it. I get it. There was that case where that crazy person hopped up on marijuana, killed all those people, except that never happened. That's a joke. So
originally, they talk about this in the documentary, but the reason that the stigma became attached to it was because of racism. They kind of the government began to look at it as this kind of evil Mexican drug, and all of a sudden they made it illegal. Whereas, like you said, it could just be seen as something that is similarly alters your experience in the same way that other drugs do.
Yeah, the roots of certain plants or things that we use. All these drugs come from somewhere, right? So cannabis is just another one. So for medical reasons, who cares? For the people that are recreationally doing pot, just so it's not so smoky. No one in my family smoked, so secondhand smoke, I'm very sensitive to it. I'm serious. I have a neighbor that smokes, and it's irritating to me because it kind of gets in the. It's I don't need to.
You could smoke with a pen if you wanted to, Chris.
Yes, I could. I know, but I'm not a. But I'm just about I don't want my whatever I'm doing to affect someone else. That's my whole thing. But so it was a great doc.
It was really good. It was really interesting. Yeah, and also directed by a woman. Just plugging that there. Yeah.
Right. Well, I'll save that one. I saw a film called American Animals, which is directed by Bart Layton. It stars Evan Peters, who funny enough, I actually went to this party at Sundance and met Evan Peters, who plays Quicksilver in the X-Men movies by Bryan Singer. He's also in American Horror Story. This last season was freaking amazing. But yeah, Evan Peters is in this film, and it's a story of 4 kids. They're like teenagers who this is in Kentucky. At this university, there's a collection of rare books at this library with a lot of security. And what they do is they plan a heist to steal the books to sell to an art dealer in Europe for millions of dollars. So they're planning this heist, but they're just like these privileged white kids who really don't have a lot, they really don't have any want, they don't have any real problems. But what's interesting about it is the director actually mixed footage of the real people who pulled off the heist. You're seeing them interviewed throughout the doc, and you see this footage of them, and then the actors that portray them in the planning of the heist. It's amazing. And it's actually coming out in June. I forget the company, but American Animals loved it, blown away by it, and I'm actually looking forward to seeing it again. But male director. That was just total coincidence. Yeah. What was another film that you saw?
Gosh, I'm just trying to remember. So another one.
Wait. Another one that we both saw that we both liked was Wobble Palace. You didn't see Wobble Palace? Wait, I thought you saw Wobble Palace.
No, I spoke to the actors who I really love.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I interviewed Eugene and Dasha on a previous episode covering South by Southwest. Did an interview with them, and Wobble Palace I thought was great. Or no, wait, you saw another one, Wild Honey. That was the one. Yeah. So what did you?
Wild Honey Pie. Yeah, I thought that one was really great. I mean, it's interesting when you were talking about Ready Player One and these grand scale world building movies. This is the exact opposite. It's kind of like an intimate story. It's led by Jemima Kirk from Girls, who plays Jessa, and she and her husband are trying to put on this kind of like Shakespeare festival by the ocean, and it's just basically just kind of like an intimate drama between the two of them. But what I thought was the most interesting part was that he's kind of, there's all these like small details, but one of them is that he doesn't want to have sex. That's like part of his character is he's not really interested in sex, and she is. And so part of the story is her trying to navigate that by, not to give anything away, but she becomes interested in other people because just physically. But that doesn't necessarily jeopardize her connection with her husband. So I just thought that was a really unique story, and it feels so true to life because of these small details that the director inserts into the story, and which is kind of counterintuitive. I mean, you might think that more general stories are the ones that you can access and relate to a little bit better, but I think that ones that just have little details, like the fact that her husband's a wedding DJ, I think is just really funny and just makes it feel so much more real. Like the characters like feel like people that you could know, you could talk to.
Okay, well, yeah, that's one I will definitely have to check out. The other one of the other ones I saw was this movie Alt-Right Age of Rage, and it was I mean, there's an interview I did with the guy Daryl Lamont Jenkins, he's part of Antifa. I'm sure I'm pronouncing it wrong. Antifa. He corrected me on the podcast.
Oh.
Yeah. So they're basically this anti-fascist organization, and it follows all the events that happened in Charlottesville, where that woman was killed during that, the white supremacist, protest where they were upset about the statues, and then Trump said something about, there were people wrong on both sides. This documentary was following a bunch of some of the alt-right group and Daryl leading up to this event. Obviously, they didn't know that this event was going to break out and become a national story. So, I mean, this documentary it's also kind of depressing. But I had a great conversation with Daryl about, like, why are we still having this conversation? Because I find it's taxing and wasting a lot of energy when we could be solving problems. Why aren't we building spaceships and going to Mars? Well, we actually are. But I mean, I don't know. I highly recommend the doc, if only to know what's been going on, that's been kind of hidden by certain parts of the news, and how it's being dealt with I applaud Daryl with his efforts because he handles things in, I would say, kind of a comedic way in a sense. If you can't fight him with love, fight him with comedy, I guess. But that's another podcast. Actually, you can hear my interview with Daryl Jenkins about alt-right Age of Rage. What else did you see?
Well, I'm going to move on to my favorite one because I want to talk about it.
All right, I'll talk about my
Okay. So my favorite's called Fast Color. It was directed by Julia Hart, and it's starring Gugu Mbatha-Raw. It's one of these movies that is kind of smaller scale, but also has these fantastical elements, like a Midnight Special type of thing, or Another Earth, if you said that, but with Britt Marling. And that's just, I think it's my favorite type of movie. It's so interesting. And so it starts out with Gugu Mbatha-Raw as a kind of a vigilante figure, and you're not really sure why. And she ultimately kind of reunites with her mom and her and another young woman that you're not really sure how they're all related. And they slowly reveal the fact that these three women all have these kind of special powers. And the power is to take things apart and put them back together. So it's like objects. So like a bowl, they would raise the bowl, and then it would spin around, and like all of the little shards of glass would be kind of spinning, and then it would be put back together. So it's really beautiful to look at. Obviously, really poetic and metaphorical. This kind of female power of taking things apart and putting them back together. The director Julia Hart was talking about in the Q&A that she wanted to make a superhero movie with a woman at the center, and with a power that was just kind of more productive or poetic or beautiful than just kind of destroying things, which is what a lot of superhero movies have historically.
Yeah, you mean punching things and blowing things up?
Oh yeah, just that, exactly. So this is it's beautiful to watch, and but it's not necessarily delicate and fragile women. It's really powerful, and so I thought that one was really amazing, and the actress, she's just so incredible.
Now I really want to see that movie, because it'd be interesting to see, superhero comic books, which is something I grew up reading. I mean, they're young male power fantasies, right? I mean, that's what they are. It's, I can punch this thing, I can beat up the bully that's making fun of me, I can fly, I can shoot lasers out of my eyes, whatever it is. So everything that you said really makes me want to see this movie, and I'm wondering why Marvel hasn't called her yet.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. It's kind of almost the anti-Marvel superhero movie is what the way that she seemed to be sort of selling it. And that's what it felt like to me, too. It's just, it's more poetic than that. It's slower paced, or not slower paced, but more intimate, more emotional. It's really about kind of family and motherhood, and these things being passed down through women over generations and generations. So I think that's really what it's more about than the superpowers.
Well, I saw a movie by a woman director, so and it was not the film that you would quite expect. Kay Cannon directed a film called Blockers, which you may have seen the trailer for, but it's weird because in the marketing it says the word blockers, but there is a giant
cock blockers.
Yeah.
It's a giant rooster. Yeah,
it's a giant rooster, so it's Cock Blockers should really be the name of the movie. But it's about three young females about to go to their prom. One's a sort of goth chick. One is an Indian girl. Well, she's like half Indian, half white. And then other girl's a sort of basic blonde girl. And they're all going to their prom, and they all make a sex pact to get laid at the prom. And oh my God, hilarious. It's so there. I mean, and the plot sort of turns into then the parents find out, and they try to prevent this from happening. They don't want their daughters to lose their virginity on prom night. Why would they want that happen? And John Cena's in it. He's one of the dads, Ike Barinholtz. And there's, oh my God, her name is, Judd Apatow's wife, and I always forget her name, and this is so disrespectful. Her name is not Judd Apatow's wife, But Natalia is furiously looking on IMDb now. Leslie Mann. I knew her first name was Leslie. Leslie Mann. Okay, so Leslie Mann is in it. The three of them, they have this. So there's almost like two stories going at once. So there's the story of the parents trying to, derail things. Then there's the story of the young girls trying to lose their virginity. Different choices are made. I'm not going to obviously give away spoilers. This is a sort of rapid fire review, but the most hilarious comedy of 2018, on the nose in terms of what's happening in the zeitgeist and the culture now. Not only was just everything, it's like these are well-rounded female characters. This isn't an original idea. There have been teen comedies in the past about women wanting to lose their virginity. But this is done where it just feels so real and genuine, and you understand their perspectives. You also understand the parental perspectives, just a very smart voice, but also hysterically funny. Butt chugging will become a thing.
So, yes. Well, I saw Kay Cannon actually speak about this on a panel. I haven't seen the movie, but she wrote Pitch Perfect, but this was her directorial debut, which I think is extremely interesting. And she was kind of like, someone asked her why this was the movie that she chose to direct, and she was like, well, because they offered it to me. Like, I'd never been offered the directing chance before, and I thought that was cool.
But not just that, it's like you see that, like, oh, this perspective, like, I care about seeing good movies. I don't care. Science fiction, lo-fi, sci-fi, superhero, documentary, whatever. I don't care. To me, the gender's irrelevant. Having said that, when you have that perspective, you're going to add layers more. I'm sorry, you just are. So she was the perfect director for this, and it is like an outrageous, over-the-top, blue, vulgar sex comedy that I think appeals to both audiences. It's going to appeal definitely to teens and also to adults who have kids. I mean, my kids are no longer teens. They're adults. They're human people, large. So, I was able to relate to both groups. Hysterical. And here's the other thing that someone pointed out in the Q&A after the film, which I thought was a great point, was that they're not that as important to the story, but there are the male dates, the ones that are pursuing, that are the dates of the women who are trying to lose their virginity. And what was interesting about it is you could see those characters. Someone pointed out that it's like, hey, these are good guys. They're not like just like, hey, I want to get laid, like, your typical name any of those movies in that genre. These are male characters that are acting with, respect towards their dates, with dignity, with that, they have the same goal, but they're not like forcing, and there's respectful. So someone was saying that, like, how great was it that these are good guys. These are the kind of guys you would want to pursue as a woman potentially, right? Like they were acting in admirable ways, and it was great to hear Kay confirm that, like, yeah, all of those choices were so on purpose. So right. I don't know. Well, here's what's funny. The biggest reaction at South by, what's funny is, in terms of applause and cheering, is when the little movie plays at the beginning before the film feature plays, and it says, and thanks to all the South by Southwest volunteers. People go nuts. There's so much appreciation for the volunteers here, and I also have to second that and applaud and cheer, although I'm in a public place. I'm not going to do that now, but I am sending out a Film Threat podcast cheers and applause to all the volunteers here at South by. Incredibly helpful and whatnot.
So friendly. Yeah, so friendly.
Yeah, so, yeah.
And helpful.
Yeah, and that's what I like. So I'm just amazed that gets the biggest applause is that. So cock blockers, I know you wouldn't think that, but like one of my favorite films here, at least favorite more mainstream movie, because it's coming out from Universal, I think in like a month, and then I'm hoping to get Kay Cannon on the podcast. Working on it right now. I'm working on it. Yeah. So now, is there another film you want to talk about? I have one more movie I want to talk about, but is there at least one more movie you want to talk about before we have to wrap it up? Because I know we both have places to go.
Yeah, I could do a quick. So the first one I saw here was A Quiet Place, directed by John Krasinski.
Oh, you got to see that. Oh, how was it? I'm dying to see it.
It's not my favorite type of movie necessarily, but
horror. You got to explain a little bit of what the story is.
Yeah. So it's a horror movie set in a post-apocalyptic kind of world where if you make any noise, these strange looking creatures will come and kill you. And they're just kind of like roaming around the earth, but they're blind, so they can't see anything, so it doesn't matter what you do as long as you are silent when you're doing it. So it's John Krasinski and Emily Blunt play these two parents, and they're obviously married and parents in real life, and they have these 3 children, and it's just kind of about them trying to stay alive and survive. And Emily Blunt is also, or her character is also pregnant throughout the film. So that's also kind of just this ominous thing where you're like, how in the world is she going to give birth and have a baby that's silently? I mean, I think that's actually kind of an interesting thing to watch and know from the first scene. You're like, oh, this is coming. This is going to be a really climactic moment. But it was definitely thrilling. It's 90 minutes, so it's like just kind of like a taut, little tense, little thriller. I enjoyed it for sure. It was good.
But I could tell it wasn't your favorite.
It was not my favorite. No.
Well, I'm going to end with what I think is one of my favorites of the festival, which is Bo Burnham wrote and directed a movie called 8th Grade that stars a young girl who actually just graduated from the 8th grade, which she starred in the film, and then they shot over the summer. Then she went into the 9th grade. But what I loved about the film is it really shows what it's the awkwardness of being that age. The just incredible awkwardness about your body, about what other people think of you, I leaned over to my friend, I said, I still feel like I'm in the 8th grade, because I think we all have those moments of just feeling nervous, embarrassed. There's a scene that I think a lot of people can relate to, where she goes to a pool party, a birthday party for a girl who does not like her. This girl's made it very clear that, she's one of the popular girls, and the character is not a popular girl. She goes into the bathroom and she's hyperventilating because she's in her bathing suit, about to go out to a junior high birthday party, and her body's and she just looks, she has an awkward 13-year-old girl body, right? Like it.
I can't wait to see that. I can't wait to see this movie.
God. Yeah. So she walks out, and the music and the way that the sound is played and her expressions on her face, it just feels so real. I'm getting chills even just telling you about this scene. This is how powerful. And coming from Bo Burnham, who's a stand-up comedian, right, who made this, and it's just, so it goes through all these different things. Just before to get to the Bo Burnham stuff, the writer-director. So you follow her through sort of the last week of 8th grade. She has this sort of tenuous relationship with her father, and she gets this box at the beginning of the movie, which is a box of things and a letter to herself. Not so much a letter, a video to herself of her first, week of coming into junior high, and she receives it on the last week to see how she's changed. It's one of those like time capsule things. Yeah. And then, so it's so heartwarming. It's real. There's stuff that's kind of frightening in terms of the male-female relationships. You really see how boys at that young age are so immature and predatory. And junior high might have been my least favorite stage, just because, and also high school, because it's that jockocracy that rules. It's the bro culture that runs things, because there's always the threat of physical violence from these types of kids. And then there are but the movie does balance it out with, there are those sort of predatory young boys that are just bursting with hormones and don't know how to control themselves. But there's also like nerdy, sweet young males too, who are just as awkward as the lead character. And that balance, I don't know, there's just, my friend cried during the movie. I got weepy-eyed, but held it back. But you have to see it. I know it opens in July, I think, at some point. So, but I know it was one of our, I forgot who reviewed it. I think it might have been, I forgot who reviewed it at Sundance, Matt or Anthony or whatnot. Actually, I should note that there are a lot of reviews if you enjoy this podcast, there are a lot of reviews from South by Southwest movies on the filmthreat.com right now, written by, we're the away team. It's just us, Natalia.
I know. We're covering this whole festival, yeah.
I mean, we're here to do South by, and, we're the chosen ones, I guess. But there's a whole remote team that's also covering the festival in terms of, news, and Brad Gibson, Alan Ng, Anthony Ray Bench, a bunch of the other guys who did. I know they're going to be upset with me that I forgot. Joshua Spicer, who else? Brad Gibson, I mentioned. Okay, those guys are all covering the festival remotely, so I appreciate all their efforts. It's a team effort, guys. But this movie, what I loved about it was Bo Burnham did a Q&A at the end of the film and talked about he wanted to make a movie about internet culture and how it's affecting kids. I mean, it affects me. I mean, Instagram posts, that sort of dopamine from likes and favorites and retweets and that we get, and he wanted to make a movie about an ensemble movie about different voices and how the internet affects them. But the one voice he wrote in the voice of this kind of girl going through 8th grade and what she was experiencing through how people reacted to her on social media and how we curate a version of ourselves on social media and how that, helps us, hurts us. I think social media is a double-edged sword that we don't know how it affects us. Socially, I have a friend who regularly quits social media because she feels so good when she does it. So,
I mean, honestly, thank God that Snapchat and Instagram and those things were not in existence when I was in 8th grade, because that just would have made, I can't even imagine. It must make it so much more complicated. I think there was MySpace when I was in middle school, maybe, but so that was probably my equivalent. But it's just, I can't imagine being that age and being so painfully insecure and having to curate two different versions of yourself, the real life version and the online.
Yeah, I mean, same here. Like, it's just from the standpoint of, like, it affects me now because sometimes I get trolled or shit on, or I do get, people enjoy what I do, but I'm not super popular on social media. I try to give you an interesting thing. Sometimes it's about me. Yes, I think part of social media is somewhat narcissistic, but I want to share my opinions and views about things, and not everyone agrees with me, but I cannot imagine what it's like to be that age and the social validation that both social in real life and online it's challenging, and I still think we don't know how it affects us yet in terms of our brains, in terms of our, happiness in life. And this movie at least brings up the issue, shows what it's like in the now. And another thing Bo Burnham said I thought was really interesting was how he didn't want to make like a movie about 8th grade in the past, because most people tend to, when they make those kind of nostalgic ones, they kind of, give a sugar-coated version of what their high school and or junior high experience was. So I think the way he approached it was absolutely perfect. So another one of my favorites. And I know that there's, I'm sure there's, was there anything else that you want to mention?
That I want to see. Well,
yeah, there's so many that I know that you saw. I mean, I saw as many as I could, but I a lot of being here is also reconnecting for me with a lot of friends who I haven't seen, because I haven't been to South by in more than, I think, 5 years. So yeah. So it's been fun. But I finally introduced you to the lounge.
Yes, I hadn't been there yet.
Well, it's every day you get that little punch card.
Quote unquote lounge, but it's really, this is the great thing about Austin, is that there's so many outdoor spaces.
Right.
Which isn't really a thing in New York during the winter time. I don't know if you know. Yeah, there's a snowstorm there right now.
it's you get your free drink every day at the lounge, which is a lot of fun. But any parting words as we head off, because I know you and I both have other stuff to head to.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me on again. My second festival. I turned 25 yesterday. Actually, it's my birthday.
What?
Well, at the festival, yeah.
It's your birthday now?
Yesterday. March the 12th.
Happy birthday! Oh my God, this is why you should have said something.
Well, I mean, I think it's really funny that I turned. This is also the 25th edition of the South by. So everywhere it's saying 25, and I'm like, ah.
Wow, you're as old as South by Southwest.
Yeah.
You know what?
Exactly as old.
I'm as old as the Super Bowl. And we don't have to, And you know what? They use Roman numerals. So the good thing is no one knows what number the Super Bowl is who's listening to this podcast. You're going to have to look it up. But I cannot thank you enough for your contributions on the website and for joining me again on the podcast. And I hope you do more podcasts with me, maybe a podcast of your own. I know that people really enjoyed you on the Sundance podcast. So thank you, Natalia, for being on the Film Threat podcast, being part of the Film Threat team, the growing Film Threat team.
Definitely. Yeah, more to come. And you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram. My handle is Natalia Wink, Winke.
And you can follow me, that Chris Gore, on everything, and Film Threat on everything. And we will have all kinds of anxiety by all the things you'll tweet at us. And yes, we're just we're on social media because you kind of need to be, like having a phone. It's a survival tactic, especially here at this festival, to communicate with people. Okay, now there's some conference letting out, and this is a good time to leave. So,
Yep.
All right.
Yep. Well, thank you again, Chris. Let's get out of here.